Going to prison doesn't sound like anything that you would ever want to do. But when you're locked up and that's where you're going and you're sitting in a jail and going through all of the things you're going to go through being in a jail, going to prison doesn't really sound like that bad of a thing, right? Unless you've never been there and you're going for a long time and you're scared. Yeah, then it probably certainly does. You know, in all of my experience, especially spending 20 months in the last jail that I was in waiting to go to prison, I can't remember a time. Well, actually, I take that back. There had to have been at least one time when there was at least one person who was scared to death to go to prison. Being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, telling the guards, nah, take me to isolation. Nah, I'm not trying to go to prison. Nah, don't put me on that van. But there ain't nothing them guards can do for you at that point. Your ass is going. You belong to the DOC now. You're being transferred out from city custody to state. I remember once I was found guilty and I received my 7.5-year prison sentence, I still wasn't state property just yet. I had to be processed in even before I got to prison. And mind you, I spent 20 months in the jail. I think I received my sentence after about 14 months. So I spent another 6 months in the jail waiting to go to prison. But after I received my sentence, it would be a couple of weeks later, maybe a month, and then I got a piece of mail. Guerrero, mail call. Weren't nobody writing, Joe. I got a letter from the prison system. A letter from the Department of Corrections. Oh my God, is it a pen pal? Hell nah. That shit was a state number. But again, being in a jail, lonely, no outside support. Hey, I did it all to myself. This piece of mail with a number on it that said I was now remanded to the Department of Corrections for the state of Virginia, and here's my inmate number, 1195944. I wear that shit like a badge of honor. When I came home and blew up on YouTube, I was selling merch with my state number on it. There were people who were wearing my state ID number. That shit's crazy to think about. Yeah, man, I was happy to receive that number because that was the last thing that I needed to get before I was going to be hauled off to prison. And again, 20 months later, in the middle of the night, them guards would come shaking them jail bars ever so lightly, just trying to get me to wake up. Guerrero, hey, Guerrero, wake up. B&B, you're going to prison. Yes. You know what to expect if you've already been there, and if you haven't, maybe you've heard. You're in a jail. They don't even got sodas in this jail. They got sodas in prison. They got CD players. They didn't have the MP3 and the MP4 and the JP5s yet, but they had CD players and sodas and cigarettes. Oh my. Contraband and tattoo machines and rec 3 times a day possibly, and better food, and certainly better commissary, and certainly not being charged $3 a day. Oh my, to be housed. It's crazy. You got to actually pay to be in jail. What? Man, the world has changed. But yeah, man, you're ready for it. You're ready for that change. You know, you got to get into bid mode, and you're not going to be able to do it once you've received that prison sentence and you're sitting in the jail waiting to go to prison. You're not going to be able to get into bid mode till you get where you're going. 3 o'clock in the morning, they come wake you up. B&B, pack it up. I'm giving away everything. Delicious is my cellmate. Take it. I can't take it no way. All I could take with me was just a piece of paper with some phone numbers written on it. I ain't got nobody. I ain't even got a piece of paper. Man, keep all this shit. They get us up out of the cell block. It was maybe 1 or 2 of us who were going from my particular cell block, but there was probably like 10 or 15 of us all together in total who were being processed out and transferred to prison that morning. They take us down the hallway. We're going back to booking. We ain't getting released, but they're certainly going to dress us back out in our real clothes, our street clothes. I haven't seen this stuff in 20 months. It stinks. It's disgusting. It's mildewy. It smells like old stale cigarettes and ashtrays. It barely fits because I done got back a little bit, put on a little bit of weight. Joe was all about the powder when I was out there. So I was a tad bit on the scrawny side, put on a little bit of weight in the jail. I can't even get these pants to button up. I look ridiculous. borderline homeless in comparison to some of these dudes who had these J's and these Air Force Ones on, flexing with that shit. In some cases, going to be the last time they ever put anything like that on again. Because they might be getting ready to go do life. They might get killed in prison. When you go back down there and they dress you back out in your street clothes because that's what they're going to transfer you off to prison in. You're not taking one of their jumpers with you. I hated wearing that clothes. It stunk. But I wasn't really thinking about that. I was able to overlook that because, hey, we had an hours-long van ride ahead of us. And, we were going to be riding in that inmate transport van, watching the sun come up over the horizon. It was almost a little story-esque, a little romantic, but it wasn't. Yeah. Ain't nothing like watching the sunrise in an inmate transportation van, leaving from jail, going to prison. You don't even know where you're going until they're loading you up in the van. All of y'all, you're going to Mecklenburg. Man, back in the 90s and earlier, Mecklenburg was a death camp, essentially. Dudes were dying there. Dudes were going there because they had taken life in prison. Lowly old Joe, 2010. I was on, maybe it was 2011, I can't remember. But I was on my way there for a second time. Crazy enough to think. First time I went there, that place was like a freaking summer camp. I had no idea the horror stories that could be told about that place. But going back this time, it was just a little bit different for whatever reason. They don't even tell you the day that you're leaving to go to prison. They don't tell you where you're going till they're loading you up in the van, and they get you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and your ass is on the road at 6 a.m. before the sun comes up, and there's a reason for that. It's all for security purposes. Now, if I can remember correctly, I want to say that you kind of had an idea that you were leaving the next morning. I'm pretty sure that that's how this went. You kind of had an idea that you were leaving the next morning going to prison because in the evening time, your inmate ID number wouldn't work on the phone. So if you were a prisoner who was able to get on the phone and all of a sudden that night you weren't able to do so and you had a prison sentence, it was a pretty good likelihood you were going to be leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning going to prison. But Joe didn't have nobody to call. And of course you would hear these guys who saying, hey, my number's not working. Oh shit, I'm leaving, man. They're giving their shit away before 3 o'clock. And in most all of those cases, that was the right move to make because they were gone. They were going to be getting transferred or they ended up being transferred. I wouldn't know until they came rattling my door, but we're far beyond that at this point. We're on the van ride. We're going to Mecklenburg. I'm looking out the window, listening to these dudes talking. Some dudes, you could hear it in their voice that they're scared. Other dudes, they're excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm also ambitious because I wasn't all that excited, but I guess, you're not really excited going to prison. But again, it is the better move being in prison versus being in jail. We get to Mecklenburg and it's no different than how it was the first time that I got there. This bitch, a big boy penitentiary. We got barbed wire on the top and the bottom of the fence, 2 rows of fences, going through sally ports of dog kennel-like fences to get into the intake of the prison. You're literally sitting in this dog kennel cage where they pull the van into. And you've got your inmate trustees coming with these little push carts where all of your belongings are going to be put on that push cart. And they literally strip your ass butt ball naked right there in that dog kennel, right in front of everybody, humiliating you the entire time, degrading you. It's wild. It's like a little bit like what you would see in a movie, except not blasting you with the hose, but it's somewhat like what you might see in a movie. You get your clothes back on, you go up this long walk to get to the administration building or the intake and processing building, and there they're doing the same damn thing, stripping you back down, but this time they're going to be putting you in that jumpsuit. They strip you down, they ask you, what do you want to do with your clothes? Do you want to donate it, send it home, or throw it away? Those are only 3 options. You're not keeping it. Nah, it don't matter if you ain't got but a year left. You're not keeping your clothes. That's not a part of this process. And in my particular case, my stuff was Not the greatest stuff. I was like, just throw it away. I'm not going to need it for a long time, and I don't think that it's going to be all that good to anybody else being donated. Get rid of it. I don't ever want to see it again. Don't want to think about it. I feel like if you had all white tennis shoes, you were able to keep those. If you had all white boxers, you were able to keep those. But not all the time did people have those, but sometimes they did. Some of the fly shoes that you would see out on the rec yard came into the prison. One of a few different ways came into the prison because some prisoner got transferred from jail to prison with them, and they got them through the intake process. I saw dudes out there with light blue, baby blue Air Maxes on, and I'm like, damn, how the hell did you get them through? Because the shoes had to be all white. That was crazy to think about. I don't know why that is neither. I guess, if we can go ahead and eliminate your blues and your reds, well, we've got a couple of gang colors out of the way right there. I don't really know why the shoes had to be all white. And the boxers too. I mean, that kind of makes sense in case you're bleeding or pooping on yourself. They could see that easily, I feel like. In intake, they get you in that jumpsuit. They put you through processing, talking to a counselor about, your mind state and about any potential enemies that you may have and, where it might not be safe for you to be at. They take pictures of all of your tattoos. In the process of them stripping you down, you are made to take a shower. They're not blasting you with the hose, but you do have to take a shower. They provide you with this special soap. It's not a Lisa or a Bob Barker. It's like a straight lie. And they are making you take a shower right there, washing your ass with this chemical agent of a soap. And then maybe before the shower, you got to deal with the barber because they're going to cut all your hair off. That's what they were doing back in 2010 and 2008, the 2 times that I went to prison. Nowadays, things have changed in some regards. Like maybe they're not making you cut your hair as much. You couldn't have long hair in the state of Virginia. You couldn't have facial hair neither. All you could have was that little pedo mustache. You won't have no sideburns or no nothing unless you had something referred to as a shaving profile, but that took a little bit to get because, you were allergic to the razor or something. But if you had dreads, you were being forced to cut them off, and if you weren't going to cut them off, you were going to go to isolation. I've heard stories of dudes who spent 10 years in the hole because they wouldn't cut their dreads off. And I think that they're starting to lax up on that now. I can't be for certain with that, but yeah, man. You get to intake, they take care of your clothes, they get you up in the shower, they shave your head. Your head's got to be G.I. Jane status damn near. And then you're going to go watch a movie. And we're not talking about Jurassic Park neither, though. You got to watch a movie involving a candy bar on a pillow. And when I tell you that it is a very scary movie to watch, especially if you've never been locked up before, this is the breaking point for some guys. I've mentioned in the past about this, where dudes will be white knuckling the bottom of their chair trying to hold their little cakes to that seat because this video can put the fear of God in you about potential assaults that can take place when you get to prison. Another thing that I forgot to mention was about that long walk from that dog kennel up to that intake building and the conversation that the guards were having with us. Again, it's a lot of degrading and berating type of shit coming from these guys. But they were telling us amongst, how much of a piece of shit we actually wore. Things like you're lucky getting here when you did because we're just coming off of lockdown for a big old gang war out on the rec yard. And hearing that put a little bit of fear in me because I'm like, oh shit, the last time that I was at this facility, it was like a cakewalk. But it certainly wouldn't be that way this second time. And in fact, the gang activity was a hell of a lot more prevalent. Maybe the first time that I got there during just some sort of a lax time. Maybe that was an anomaly in comparison to the way that this place was normally functioning. Because though this prison was nothing like what I imagine it was in the 90s and before then, it certainly had the reputation. And dudes who got to this prison wanted to uphold that reputation. They wanted to stand on business, carrying on the legacy of what this prison actually was. At one point, housing death row. At another point, one of the biggest escapes in the state of Virginia took place at this prison, involving something like 6 or 7 prisoners who took a guard hostage with some sort of a fake gun. They were able to get into the guard booth, get the keys, and then had a gurney with a blanket and a fire extinguisher over the top of this thing, with the fire extinguisher going off, making it look like it was smoke, and somehow convincing the rest of the prison staff to open the gates because we've got a bomb on this stretcher and you need to get us an ambulance right here so we can get away. Took place right there at Mecklenburg. Some of the most notorious prisoners from the state of Virginia were housed there, and again, here I was for a second time going to prison. You would have to first spend time in these burgundy jumpsuits, which was like the intake building, and you would only be there for a short period of time. You were also caged off from the rest of the prison population, but when you did go to rec, you could see those guys through the gates, and it looked like a Skittles pack out there on the rec yard with all of the different colored jumpsuits. I believe there was something like 5 buildings there, so you had every color jumpsuit from blue, yellow, green, red, burgundy, and another color or two that I just can't recall right this second. But each of these different colors represented like custody levels, as, tan was another one of these colors, or brown. It was something like that. Each one of these colors represented a custody level. I remember being in like a light blue, which meant that I was not a long timer, having maybe something like under 10 years qualified you for light blue color. But your tans, your greens, those colors represented a lot more time. And it was crazy because once I did get moved out into general population, I would run into a guy that I knew there who was in a tan jumpsuit, a guy nicknamed Google, who ended up getting sentenced to 216 years for a home invasion charge, was offered a 25-year plea and didn't take that, and instead got absolutely smoked up in the courtroom with over 200 years. Never was coming home, and here I was running into this guy at this first prison that I would be at during this 7-year prison sentence. And there really wasn't a whole lot for me to be talking to him about. We couldn't relate on any level outside of the fact that we had been in the jail together. And to be honest with you, now that we were here, I really didn't want to associate with this dude too much. I didn't know if he was about to be a target, if he already was one. And Joe was just trying to find his way at that point. But going to prison, that would be the start of me being able to actually get into bid mode and really get my tattooing legs up underneath of me, getting my first tattoo machine and all of the tattoo charges that I caught because of that. Yeah, man, going to prison. Ain't nothing like it. If you've never experienced it, it's like, it's almost hard to really put into words unless you go through it. And if you have gone through it, maybe you know what I mean right there. It's crazy. That transport ride is interesting amongst so much else that you could say about it. And that whole process of getting processed into prison after you've been in a jail for however long that you have, it just hits a little different. And crazy to think that I went through that twice. It's one thing to tell people that you've been to prison, but to be able to tell people that you've been to prison twice in your lifetime sort of makes people wonder, probably. You've been to prison twice? God bless it, man. What you doing now with your life? Yeah, man. But I'm happy to see where I am today and how far that I've come since all of that. Getting to prison and going there. I didn't know if I was going to make it out. Yeah, I only had 7.5 years, but anything can happen in prison. Any given day in prison could be your last day. You got to keep your head on a swivel there no matter where you are. Just glad to know that I made it through all of that, and that is a major part, probably one of the biggest parts of my past. Hey, look, that's it. I just wanted to share this story with you guys, and I hope it was one that you enjoyed. And if it was, please leave a like and a comment on this, letting me know exactly what you thought about this video. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace!